Ready to clear out some clutter? Donate your new and gently used items to the Habitat for Humanity Portland Region Restores. Help keep usable items out of our local landfill, plus it's tax deductible. You can donate everything from appliances to furniture, building materials, to lighting, paint, housewares, and more. And you can request a donation pickup online or drop off your donation at any of the Restore locations in Beaverton, Gresham, or Portland. Visit pdxrestore.org to learn more. That's pdxrestore.org. Plan a winter wellness getaway before the chaos of hosting and holiday travel begins. Salishan Coastal Lodge offers endless ways to nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Start your mornings with complimentary yoga, unwind at the spa, or cap off your day with food and drinks by the fire. And as a CityCast listener, you can treat yourself to 20% savings on your stay using the code CityCast. Plan your restorative stay at Salishan Coastal Lodge. Book now at salishan.com using code CityCast for 20% savings and start your journey to feeling refreshed and renewed. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the difficulties our city and the U.S. Department of Justice have had keeping the Portland Police Bureau accountable for their actions, the new threat some small towns along the Columbia River Gorge are facing, and why so many cash-strapped public school districts in Oregon are turning their noses up to state funding. Joining me on this week's Friday News Roundup are KBOO News Director Althea Billings and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, December 12th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Althea, John, thank you for hanging out with me this morning. How are you two doing?
Hey, how's it going, Claudia?
Hey, happy to be here.
For those of you new to the show, today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, I usually ask an opening question so our listeners can get to know our guests a little better. And today's opening question is related to the proposed merger between Kroger and Albertsons. Do you guys remember this story?
Yes, we talked about it quite a bit, and then nothing happened. So.
Yeah. It's over! Hooray!
Yeah, the merger was pretty big news in Oregon because there were major concerns that it would affect jobs and prices at both our local Freddy's and Safeways, and also because one of the judges overseeing the merger was Oregon U.S. District Court Judge Adrienne Nelson. And I don't know if you guys know this, but she's a local hero. There's actually a high school named after her in Happy Valley. But anyhow, check this shit out. After the judge rulings and the FTC shut down their bid to merge, instead of appealing, Albertsons just decided to sue Kroger's for billions of dollars instead, saying that Kroger was at fault for the failed merger. So now these two giants are battling each other. Merger no more. So much drama.
It's like when mom and dad fight. It's tough. It's tough to see.
This all leads us to this week's opening question, which I think might be equally as dramatic. I'm bringing back a classic, Kiss, Marry, Kill, Thruple. Althea, are you familiar? It's just like a regular Kiss, Marry, Kill game, but we've added an option for a thruple.
Okay.
I'll go first, just so you kind of get the rhythm, and I'm sure you guys have to think about this. But here's the options. Kiss, Marry, Kill, Thruple, New Seasons, Trader Joe's, Safeway, Fred Meyer's. I would kiss New Seasons and regret it. Marry Trader Joe's. I hate that I'm saying this because it's my local store and everyone who works there is super nice, but I would kill Safeway because there's just better options out there. And I would thruple with Fred Meyer's because that girl's got it all. And the only reason I wouldn't marry her is because I know I would leave her for Trader Joe's in a heartbeat. So the only way that would work out is in a thruple with Trader Joe's. I've given this all way too much thought. What about you guys?
Also going to kill Safeway. Not because I have any problem with Safeway, just because I am so much more devoted to the Kroger brand soda water that they stock at Fred Meyer, and I can't live without it. So I am marrying Fred Meyer.
Oh.
Kiss New Seasons, because obviously, and I think that I would thruple New Seasons and Trader Joe's because, let's be real, those are the two that are going to be most into it.
You know how they talk to you at checkout.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I would kill New Seasons. Yeah, well, the union busting, and I always regret going over there.
Always, literally. Okay, go on.
I would marry Fred Meyer because actually I realized recently that Fred Meyer has been buying my loyalty since I was a child. That's where I was shopped growing up, and they would give us cookies, and they would give you stickers at checkout.
Bastards.
And I realized I've been indoctrinated my whole life. Anyway, so we're getting married. Maybe that's bad, actually. Maybe that's like a really bad message.
Such a traditionalist, Althea.
Yeah. All I'm hearing is like, he reminds me of my dad. Like,
Well, that's okay. Wow, that's gonna be out there now. Then I'm smooching Safeway, and I'm thruppling Trader Joe's, which I think is what John said too.
Except he was killing Safeway.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, this was illuminating. I want you to know, Althea, that I went back and forth with killing New Seasons, but it was really hard for me to do since even if it's bought out by like, this international company, it's still a local brand and it's just hard. It's like a zombie movie when like your loved one turns into a zombie and you're just like, I can't do it,
Yeah.
It's just sad.
I mean, New Seasons is killing me with the prices, so it's reciprocal.
It's crazy. Yeah, Whole Foods is actually cheaper, which is insane.
Oh, wait. Idea for the whole paycheck equivalent, new tax bracket instead of New Seasons.
Oh, I love that. Nice.
Try that on, see if it works for you.
Well, thank you both for your answers. On to the news of the week. Okay, Althea, what's your story this week?
I was looking at a story from Courtney Vaughn at the Portland Mercury called Can Portland's New Independent Monitor Help Prevent Police Misconduct? And as we are heading into new government, new city council in a matter of mere weeks, it's a good time to reflect on what on earth is going on with our police and are they being overseen? And the answer is kind of, and in different ways and sort of incompletely. So this article starts by talking about one of the recent payouts by Portland police to a protester from 2020, a particularly egregious case. And it kind of goes into this reflection, right, of everything that has happened with Portland police and how folks have tried to hold them accountable. So $3.3 million have been paid out to protesters who were injured by police since 2020. There's 260 people who have sued the city in that time for the way that police treated them. And it's not an isolated thing. It's not like it came out of nowhere. Even before the 2020 protests, Portland was under a settlement with the DOJ because the police bureau had a pattern of using excessive force on people who have disabilities or who are in mental distress. And we were supposed to be done in 2020, and boy, if we weren't, because the Portland police were, I'll say it, doing bad at not abusing the public when the public is exercising their rights. So the DOJ intervened at that point. There's been third-party contracts to kind of like evaluate, well, did we fix all of the stuff that we were supposed to fix? And then, of course, in 2020, Portland voters, 82% supported a actual police oversight board with teeth that has yet to come into effect. So there's a lot of layers of what's going on, but the sort of most recent thing from the Independent Monitor was saying like things are a little bit better, but you guys should still maybe get it together in some other ways.
So when I read that article, I was curious who MPS and Associates were. So that is the independent monitor of mandated Portland police reforms under the city's federal settlement agreement over excessive force, chosen by not only the city of Portland, but the U.S. Department of Justice to essentially take over that like overseeing role for the Portland Police Bureau. And like, so MPS and Associates is just Mark P. Smith, his name, and friends. That's what I learned. And he served as the Inspector General of the Los Angeles Police Department for the past 6 years. And I don't know if you guys know anything about the LAPD, but they also bad.
Oh, wait, they haven't figured out how to do cop ethically? No.
For a much longer history, I would say, like just egregiously bad.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they were like, let's call in the big boys.
Let's get the Baltimore PD in on this too. Let's just get all the heavy hitters. No pun intended.
Have you been around cops doing it wrong? Come on in. Why don't you be in charge?
Well, all this, it just made me wonder, like, is the PPB even going to listen to what this independent monitor has to say? Because I don't know if you guys saw that OPB story, that was just published. There was like an investigator that looked into a shooting that happened in 2022. It was a deadly shooting caused by a mistaken identity. and just like the suspect running, and this police officer saw this person running. He was a black man, did not fit the description of the all white man they were looking for. And he just shot within a second 3 times, which the investigator into the police shooting was just like, that goes against training to not shoot a volley of shots, but rather to assess between each trigger pull. Also, he was running away from you. How were you scared?
Yeah.
Police Chief Day and Mayor Ted Wheeler were just like, you're wrong. They argued with the investigation that was, so I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is this going to be any better when this like independent monitor or anybody comes in if they're not taking any accountability, basically?
Althea, you've been looking into this. Like, how does the independent monitor relate to the new police accountability board that is still coming? Are these working in tandem? Are these completely separate institutions?
Yeah, my understanding is that the independent monitor is related to the DOJ settlement. And so the DOJ has had, sort of a handle on the PPB for this whole time because of their pattern, right? And so the independent monitor is sort of the DOJ backing up and saying, hey, here's this guy, this LAPD guy, I guess, is going to be in charge of making sure. And well, of course, and his associates. Me when I go out to the bar with my friends. We're having a meeting.
Are you going to start an LLC for your like happy hours?
Althea and Associates.
It has a ring to it. Maybe I get why he did it. But that's to monitor the compliance with the DOJ settlement. So if they mess up majorly, the DOJ comes back in, right? The Police Oversight Board is separate new charter language that is going to be, installed and put together next year with the new city council. There was like analysis as to whether the Police Oversight Board would mesh with the DOJ settlement, but I think that that's mostly been sorted out. These are two separate things. They might be looking at similar issues when things go awry, of course, but I don't think that they necessarily collaborate on these things.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're separate in a sense. But again, my question is like, what are they going to be able to do if like the police bureau is just like, no, we're good?
Well, yeah, that OPB article that you reference, it's someone inside, like their internal affairs was like, hey, this was out of policy. And then everybody who's in charge at the police bureau was like, yeah, but no.
Exactly.
Also, like with the independent monitor, though, like, okay, the independent monitor is sort of like part of a DOJ settlement, right? So like, if the independent monitor isn't happy, then what's the consequence? The Department of Justice comes back in. Well, we are about to see what could be a very different Department of Justice at a federal level as well. So I also wonder how that plays into it and like what that says about this other review committee and its importance going forward.
Yeah, I think taking the ball a little bit out of the Fed's court. I mean, partially, I think the independent monitor does that so that the DOJ is less directly involved. I don't think in reaction to the changing administration or anything. But, if you look at all of the different iterations of oversight on police, like there's a lot of overlapping ones, none of which have a ton of teeth, right? And that there's been the Citizen Review Committee and Independent Police Review. And there's been many, many attempts of Portlanders, of the government, of trying to have accountability for police officers and have influence over the way that they operate, right? And the Police Oversight Board that we've passed is the one that has the most power, which is also why police establishment has pushed back on it the hardest, right? They have subpoena power, something that previous, citizen committees have not had the ability to actually get access to the files that they would need to make a decision or to be informed about what happened. And that's, partly why we see so many grand juries putting their hands up and be like, yeah, no, they didn't do anything wrong. No way we could proceed with anything to try to hold somebody accountable.
Right.
So at a press conference last week talking about the governmental transition, Mayor-elect Wilson was there and Mayor Ted Wheeler was there. KBOO asked about the Police Oversight Board and this new system that's coming into place and whether they've worked on it. And Wilson was like, yeah, had a very positive meeting about that the other day. But Mayor Wheeler is very passionate about this topic. And before the election, a couple months ago, a federal judge basically put it out of reach of the current council, that they could not seat the nominating board who would nominate the people to be on the oversight board that would actually have the power to hold police accountable, right? And there was this whole debate about all of that. And Ted Wheeler at the time was pretty fired up about not having that power. And as of last week, he was relatively fired up, I guess, in my opinion, about that being out of reach of his colleagues.
Okay, here's the clip Althea recorded from that press conference.
This council's work on the new Police Accountability Board has been stalled by federal Judge Simon. He has disqualified this city council from appointing the nomination committee that would in turn nominate the members of that commission. There's work that commission has to do, for example, actually hiring the professional investigative staff. It is all on hold. And that's not because this city council wanted to stall it. We were directed by a federal judge to stall it and turn it over to the next group. So it is currently on hold.
So essentially what you're saying, Althea, is that Mayor Ted Wheeler really wanted to have this settled before he left. And now he's just like, oh no, this is going to be a problem for somebody else. And also he's just like, the buck is definitely getting passed.
A little bit of that, and definitely some frustration with the federal judge in the actual court case, siding with former City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, who raised concerns about the type of folks that would be appointed to the nominating board with the current composition of City Council. And again, this was before all but one of them were going to be out of office. And of course, this will be a body that has an enormous amount of influence going forward.
So the judge was basically like, yeah, this isn't going to be independent, since like the people who are being monitored can just pick the people that hold them accountable.
Right.
Well, thank you, Althea, for breaking that down and for bringing us a clip. I think this is the first time we're going to have a clip on a Friday Roundup.
We got a clip.
Ooh.
Well, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, more headlines of the week. Profile Theater, one of Portland's oldest professional theater companies, is thrilled to be back with their 2024-2025 season featuring award-winning playwright Lauren Yee. This season, you're able to connect deeply with Lauren's groundbreaking work over a series of productions. This includes Samsara, one of Lauren's earliest plays, a satirical confrontation with modern-day colonialism and what to expect when you're expecting someone else's child. The season closes out with the Playwright Festival, where audiences meet and hear new work from the next season's top-secret featured playwrights. Memberships to the 2024-2025 season are available now. Head to profiletheater.org/memberships to become a member today, or head to profiletheater.org, that's profile, THEATRE.org, to learn more about the incredible Lauren Yee season.
Hi, David Plotz here. I'm the CEO of CityCast, and I want to talk to you about becoming a member of your local CityCast. By now, you've probably heard the team behind your local podcast talk about why you should become a member. But I want to tell you why I hope you'll consider becoming a member. We started CityCast because we believe cities are amazing and that they're at their best when they're full of passionate people who know what's going on and are actually engaged in them. But it's pretty hard to know what's going on in your city and how to be part of it and how to change it. That's why we bring you daily local podcasts and newsletters made by locals for locals that are informative and joyful and funny and completely unique to your city. But it takes a ton of effort and your support to keep us going. If this show has helped make you a better resident of your city, first of all, that is great. And second of all, please help make sure we can keep on making it. Become a member of your local CityCast at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. And thank you. Everyone on our team will see and appreciate your support.
All right, before I get into my headline, I just have to tell you all something super duper important. Today is the final day of our year-end membership campaign, and it's also the last chance to grab our exclusive CityCast Portland tote bag. which I'm sure is going to become an immediate collector's item. You should, if you don't get it, check it out on eBay.
Yeah, the prices on the resale market are already through the roof. All joking aside, membership.citycast.fm is how you can become a member. Like, I know we've been talking about this tote bag a lot this week, but like, it's a way to also show off your love for local journalism and for this show and for, the people who are regular contributors on the show like Althea and for the city, It's your membership that really makes all of what we do at CityCast Portland possible. I think a lot of us probably feel kind of burnt out on national news. But what we're trying to do here is really connect you with what's happening in the city where we all live and in your neighborhood and on your block, in ways that no one else can. Like yesterday, Claudia, we had our old friend Crystal Ligori on talking about her personal tour of Lentz, which was like the most crystal tour of a neighborhood imaginable,
Yeah, we've also had her on to discuss strawberries in the region. And I know that was a favorite episode for a lot of listeners just because the depth that she goes into these things, But I think that we all kind of know that taking political action starts at home. By investing in CityCast Portland, we can continue sharing these local stories and perspectives that can help us all do some good in our community.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys know about what was going on with the accountability board before Althea told you? I didn't.
Nope, I'm learning right along with the rest of us. Yeah. So yeah, if you've been thinking about joining and becoming a member of CityCast, today's the day to do it. $8 a month, $80 a year. You'll not only be supporting us, who I assume is your favorite team of podcast personalities of all time, but you will also get that limited edition first pressing tote bag. So don't wait. You can head to membership.citycast.fm right now and become a member.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
So my headline, the thing that caught my eye this week, did so because even though it's a well-reported story, it's rife with local drama. So it just feels like I'm being told some very juicy gossip. And it involves an industry that I already have mixed feelings about, which is glamping.
Big glamping comes to Oregon.
I know, seriously. So Willamette Week's Rachel Saslow looked into a story coming out of Husum, Washington. Now, that's a tiny, no stoplight having town east of Portland in the Columbia River Gorge. To give you a better sense of where it is, it's about like a 17-minute drive from Hood River, and it's only just a few minutes north of White Salmon. So like right next to the White Salmon River. And people go there specifically for whitewater rafting. And 4 years ago, Under Canvas, a hospitality company that claims to be the nation's premier upscale camping experience provider, decided to set up shop in Husum, much to the chagrin of the locals living in and around that area. So Under Canvas already has over a dozen sites at the border of national parks like Glacier, Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, Zion. So just beautiful locations. And Husum is also a very beautiful location with like panoramic views of not only the gorge, but Mount Hood, which is, if you've been to that area, it's pretty awesome. That's where Loop De Loop, that one of my favorite wineries is. And I'm always going off about that view. So what Under Canvas does is basically set up fancy tents and yurts, and people spend anything between $2.99 to $9.89 a night to sort of just sleep outside, but not really. This is a quote from Rachel's article. There is West Elm furniture in the lobby tent, an on-site yoga deck, a full breakfast and dinner menu, nightly s'mores, acoustic live music, and then they have brand collaborations with Gibson guitars, Pendleton blankets, Hydro Flask drinkware, Black Diamond hiking poles, and Aviator Nation sweats and hats. And I also looked online to see what their sites look like, what the tents look like, because I was curious, like $9.89, like what are you getting? We're talking like fancy hotel room vibes. Like there's king size beds. There's a lounge area with sofas and coffee table inside, a wood burning stove with stocked firewood, a private bathroom with flushing toilets, hot showers. Also, the tent is on a wooden platform, so you're never touching dirt. Which is, I'm sure what most people hate about camping. Yeah. All the dirt, Okay.
You need a dirt management strategy when you're camping. That's for sure.
And though opposition to Under Canvas setting up shop came from like a broad range of groups, like the Friends of White Salmon River, the Confederated Tribes of Yakima Nation, the main couple Rachel interviewed for the story were Dennis and Bonnie White because they were a big reason why it took 4 years for Under Canvas to finally get the go-ahead from Klickitat County. Now, the Whites spent $80,000 putting in appeal after appeal trying to stop them. And also, Under Canvas is moving in literally like less than 100 feet from their property line. Way back in the 70s, Bonnie and Dennis were also instrumental in having the White Salmon River designated a national wild and scenic river. So they're now retired organic apple and pear farmers in their 80s, but they're like OG hippie environmentalists. They could not resist that fight. Ultimately, according to the Under Canvas site, though, they're opening their Husum, Washington site this coming May. Now, before I get into the many reasons the locals are upset, I'm just curious if any of you have ever gone glamping or whatever. And this isn't a trap. Like, we listen and we don't judge.
I mean, I'm just, the detail that is logged in my mind is the yoga deck, which, like, I don't have a yoga deck at home. Like, am I missing out? Like, am I underperforming in life without a yoga deck? It just had never occurred to me that that's something I need.
I immediately think of that Parks and Rec episode where Tom brings like DJ Roomba out to the woods and like a tiny, like everything from Sky Mall. And this sounds even a level above that.
I remember that episode. And everyone just kept going to his tent because they're just like, damn. Like he had like a popcorn maker and like a TV. He had like his like Xbox. It was so ridiculous. I remember that. So the two big main concerns that the whites and other community members had were the elevated wildfire risk and their already hazardous road access. So like the roads there are unmaintained dirt and gravel roads. And they're estimating that the normally 30 vehicles that access that area with the new site would jump up to 300, and add to that the potentially clueless out-of-town rich people that might not understand how easy it is to burn down the gorge in the summer. Also, this glam crown is like on a sloping hillside that's already prone to dry and windy conditions. There was already a fire on the construction site back in August. And even though it was extinguished promptly, it kind of proved the concerns to be true. Like, hey, it's easy to start a fire here. So one of the concessions to them opening was they're like, okay, we will take out the wooden stoves.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, okay, there's environmental issues. There's like, this and that. But I mean, like, I think what it really comes down to is like, this is sort of a question of what we do with some of these untouched landscapes, right? My hunch is that that's why the locals are sort of recoiling from this. I'm guessing that it's more about what sounds like a very beautiful untouched space and not wanting a bunch of like Yahoo bozos from Portland coming through and like just tromping all over it with their acoustic guitars and yoga decks,
Yeah,
Which, if I had lived in an area like this, like in perpetuity for decades or let alone ancestral sort of roots here, I would find that really annoying too.
Yeah, well, it's not just Portland, John. Internationally, the reason they opened a spot there is they're like, oh, our clients have been asking for the gorge for years. Trust me, it's not Portlanders who are asking for the gorge. We can go to the gorge, But everyone in town isn't bummed because the expectation is that, of course, it's going to ultimately bring business to like local adventure outfitters, restaurants, wineries in the region. One of the county commissioners who approved permits for Under Canvas, Lori Zoller, is actually the owner of Zoller's Outdoor Odysseys, and she is hella stoked.
I just can't imagine traveling internationally, coming into PDX, renting a car, driving out to the Columbia River Gorge, getting a tent camping site, and then sitting in a West Elm chair. It's just like, who are you?
And here's $1,000, good sir.
Well, not just that, also driving past all the signs from the locals that says where you're going is not welcome here.
Yeah, good point, Althea, because there are signs everywhere that say no Under Canvas.
Under Canvas, not welcome.
Yeah.
So, Claudia, this is the plot of Yellowstone.
Glamping?
That Kevin Costner show, which is having its finale episode this weekend, actually.
Whoa!
So
Shut
I've been
up,
watching
what?
Yellowstone. Yeah, it's about like a ranch in Montana and like all the development deals that are encroaching on like John Dutton, aka Kevin Costner's like admittedly kind of problematic cattle ranch in rural Montana. I mean, there's a lot more like sex and murder in Yellowstone than I imagine is happening at this glamping site. But
Hey,
You
man,
don't
you
know.
don't know?
hey, man, art imitates life, imitates art. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they have like 120 acres. They're not going to use all 120 acres. They're just like, people can still essentially like use the land as they've been using it before.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying now. But yeah, I just imagine the couple, Dennis and Bonnie, who basically made that a nationally scenic river site so people couldn't build shit on it and then have this happen. because they made it pristine. Does that make sense? Like they were just like, oh, it was almost like a perfect, setting for someone to go, oh, this is gorgeous. I wonder if someone would pay me $1,000.
I mean, if I were them, I'd be pissed off too, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take another break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass f- So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
All right, John, what caught your eye this week?
Yeah, this is all rooted in some really excellent reporting from Julia Silverman at the Oregonian, sort of looking at Oregon's education achievement levels, what's going on in terms of funding those things, some of the programs that exist to try and help schools that are having a hard time, and why it's really, really difficult to make them work. So, give you a little bit of backstory before we get into it. Like, historically, Oregon hasn't put a ton of conditions on the money that they've given to schools compared to other states. Like places like Texas and California and Massachusetts all have provisions where like the state can basically take over a school district if they think it's not performing well. Oregon doesn't have any laws like that. But like a lot of places, Oregon schools have had a lot of problems bouncing back from the pandemic, especially in places that are, have low income families or students who don't speak English as their first language. There's like a lot of just lagging behind in terms of reading and math. And this story comes back to a law that was passed back in 2019 called the Student Success Act. It raised a bunch of money by taxing businesses for schools. And one of the parts of it that this article really zones in on is what's called a intensive program. So this is a voluntary program that districts that are having a hard time can enter into, and they get more money, they get more attention. They have like outside experts come in that sort of help them with strategies to like improve what's going on in the district. But it does mean that these districts have to sort of like cede some spending decisions to outside groups. So this was passed in 2019. It was like, people thought it was a really great idea, but so far only 4 districts across the state have actually taken up the offer for this free money that comes with a lot of strings attached. Of those districts that have taken it up, Reynolds, a school district that sort of touches the Portland area. But there's been a lot more districts that qualified for this program, but just sort of said, you know what? No, thanks. We're not going to do it. Districts like Parkrose, which is also in Portland, they were eligible for it, and they just looked at it and were like, actually, even though we need the money, even though our students are falling behind, we don't think that this program is where it's at. So that's like sort of the question here is like, what is it about this program that isn't working? And what does that tell us about how complicated it is to sort of boost student achievement at these districts that are having a hard time? Before I go on, like, what are your guys' first thoughts on this?
I mean, it's interesting, right? It does present this sort of quandary, but one thing that I thought was interesting that the article noted is that it may be the case that some of these school districts have a little bit of, well, I don't know what the word is for it, but they remember when something similar might have happened a few years ago and it didn't go good. So
distrust.
They don't necessarily, distrust. That's what it is. That's what it is. They're not, gung-ho to be the first school district to take up this sort of new strategy when there's been things in the past where maybe they got an influx of money, but then it fell away pretty quickly and they couldn't keep up with what new systems were built. And ain't that just always the way, by the way?
Exactly. Yeah. It's really interesting to look at what has happened in Parkrose in relation to this program, right? Parkrose was eligible for it, but the superintendent said they looked into it and there was like a couple things. They just didn't feel like they had examples or clarity about how this was going to work. They also felt that they had not enough time to like make a call on whether or not this was a good idea. They said that they had a 10-day window to decide whether to be a part of this program. Compare that to Reynolds, which is the district that has been in the program the longest and received the most money from this program. Reynolds has gotten about $12 million. And like the outcomes are super mixed about what they've been able to do with it, right? They have been able to fund staff members who work with like multilingual students and students with disabilities. They've been able to fund social workers, but there hasn't been like a ton of really clear outcomes in terms of the metrics of what this has achieved. There has been a 8% increase in ninth graders on track to graduate. That's great. 19% of third graders are reading at their grade level, but that's like still half of the state average, So now what people are coming back and saying is like, well, there's a lot of intangible benefits. Like we don't have really good metrics to test primary school students or elementary school students.
So from reading what superintendents said on why they chose not to take part in the state program compared to those who did, initially I was just like, what happened in the past? Like what brought this distrust?
I mean, I think what they said was that in the past, there's been initiatives that have required a ton of work on the local school's part, right? A lot of administration, a lot of like sort of programmatic work that you have to go through, and that they felt like it sucked up a bunch of people's time and like didn't lead to any good outcomes, which like I can totally relate to that. You can imagine a consulting company coming in and saying, we know how to fix your podcast, Claudia. And
I'm like, oh my God, please, thank you.
Them making us do a bunch of work and us being like, great, that was a huge waste of time. Thanks for wasting millions of dollars. So they were skeptical about taking something on that like, they're like, wait, what are we actually getting ourselves into?
Yeah, no, I get it. But I what I want is like real life, like what happened?
You want the
dirt.
I
want to know. I'm like, no, I get the platitudes. I get the general gist they're laying out. But I'm like, give me names.
Claudia wants to know where the bodies are buried.
Yeah, always. Are you kidding me? Oh, you don't? So here's the thing, though. Like you said, it's not like Reynolds is all of a sudden a better school. It's been years that they've been in this program. But they're thinking like this is going to be institutional, like changes that will seed and, grow into the future. But I mean, at this point, none of the schools that said yes, aside from like the one in the Dalles, like they were just like, that was awesome. Thank you.
North Wasco. Yeah.
Yeah. North Wasco superintendents was just like, yeah. Like when they were like, why did you take the money? She's like, I couldn't think of a reason why not to.
Yeah.
She was like, let's go.
Yeah.
And, looking at Parkrose, the district that chose not to, we did just see last month, they tried to pass a levy that voters did not pass, and now they're looking at between a $1 and $3 million deficit just for where they're at in terms of funding right now. So,
yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I also think that this is sort of going to set up some of the conversations that we're going to have next year about the state budget and about funding of schools as well. Because Governor Kotek is proposing some tweaks to the way that we decide where money goes to schools each year. I'm not going to get into that because it's like esoteric and I'm not sure I completely even understand it at this point. But like it is going to be an issue in the next budgeting process, in the next legislative session as well.
Yeah. Man.
What sticks out to me is metrics, right? I get the sense that educational outcomes is sort of squishy in the way that like, oh, how do we spend money to reduce crime is kind of squishy, right? Like if you have a finite amount of money, what are the things that have the most impact? And what is it worth, I guess? Mm-hmm. Because I think that that's something that gets kind of looped into this conversation, maybe at like the unspoken level, but like how much should an individual student be supported in public school to try to get them to these levels that they want them to be at, to be a successful reader, to pass tests, to be able to like go into adulthood as somebody who's like productive and equipped. I mean, they've had the funding for a little while, but not that long. And part of that was the pandemic. So, but then it's also like how many sort of extensions and excuses. It's like, well, this was a bad time to measure it because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And we shouldn't worry about metrics yet because this happened, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It feels like we fall down that relatively frequently, but it is still the case that Oregon public schools are struggling, especially compared to other states.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I'm curious how all of this is going to shake out. Because I'm still like of that camp, sorry. I'm still of that, I'm still of that glamp. Even though I understand why local control is important, I don't think that local funding is as important, as Park Rose is learning. Like, it's not an easy ask that your community is able to afford public funding. That should be coming from a state level for sure.
And I think, there is sort of this like push and pull, because on one hand, the, districts and teachers and administrators, they're saying, oh my gosh, we are so chronically underfunded, which is like very true. But then it turns around and taxpayers are saying, oh my God, we are spending so much money on education and like not seeing results, which is also true. So, more yoga decks in public schools. That's my policy proposal.
You think that's going to help?
Yoga decks and West Elm chairs. Yeah.
Oh God.
What if that was it though?
It was all just design and vibes.
We never thought it would work.
Students love it.
Apparently, students just learn better from a very cozy armchair.
Turns out that's the key to learning to read is not phonics. It's not specialized books or training or an extra teacher. It's this really expensive chair. Will you buy it for our kids? Are our kids worth this very expensive chair?
Oh, man. Well, John, thank you for looking into that.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to remind everyone again that today is your last chance to support CityCast Portland and get that exclusive members-only tote bag. You can still head over to membership.citycast.fm to join. And remember to write in your address so we know where to mail it. So John knows where to mail it. John is going to be, personally folding each tote bag, kissing it, and putting it.
I'm going down to my basement to hand stitch each tote bag for every individual member right after this.
Handcrafted by John.
Down into the workshop. No, but seriously, like, thank you so much to everybody who has become a member. We've seen like so many of your names come through over the last couple days, and like really lovely comments from you all. It is just like so great to know that you're out there and that you're listening and that like you care about what we're doing too. So on behalf of me and Claudia and Julia and Rachel and Althea and like everybody who's involved in this, just thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks you guys for hanging out with me. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I might actually get a new car this weekend. Just saying, I'm so excited.
Whoa.
Awesome.
New to me car.
There you go.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producers this week were Julia Fiaioni, Natalie Rivera, and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our Hey Portland newsletter editors were Rachel Monahan and Adrian Gonzalez. Our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.